Today what we're doing is, after we submit the file to processing, the lender has approved it, they'll give you what is called conditional loan approval. And you just need to know how to read the conditional loan approval. And what we're going to show you is, you don't necessarily copy and paste that condition to verbiage, which is more technical for us mortgage consultant. You want to convert it and translate it to more or less layman's term, something that the average consumer would understand. And that's what we call a needs list. And you're going to send out a needs list to the borrower just so they understand what they need to get. You wouldn't put the 50 condition that is required to close a loan. You just give them enough for what we need from them. The processor will then get the rest from the third party. I'm going to cover all of the different reports that you're going to run into. Every transaction, whether it's purchased or refinance, you're going to have an appraisal report. Home inspection report are only for purchases. Pest inspection report are only for purchases. And roof certification can be for both, depending on how the appraiser worded within the appraisal report. Then we'll finally go over the HUD-1 settlement statement. After you've cleared all the PTDs, which stand for prior to docs, and what that means is that before they can draw the loan docs for the borrower to sign, you just need to get these conditions. Some condition can be moved to prior to funding, meaning the docs have been drawn, borrower has signed, but there's still some condition left before you fund it. Okay, so we're going to have a lot of things coming out that will support your production, and the goal is to get our company producing back to about 1,000, 2,000 loans per month. I know you guys you think it's impossible, but it's going to be a 2 to 3 year effort, and that's my goal. But the first milestone will be at the end of April to do 100 loans per month. Okay, so that should be a fairly decent and attainable goal. So just to let you know, we're growing at the level of what I anticipate to be one of the national leaders in the loan. So we're small now, but in our 2 to 3 year focus, we'll bring it up to the 1,000 plus, and that's what we're doing here. So kind of to let you guys know is that we want to standardize this whole training process, and that's why we're recording this, we're refining it, making sure that everybody has at least that common knowledge. Okay, so I don't know if you guys caught this, but I'm not going to go over it. If you guys aren't receiving these syllabus, go ahead and send me an email to kevin@myequityzone.com here, or if you want to send it, you'll probably get a fast response. Send it to my team at Green Team at myequityzone. They'll send it to you there. And today's is that we're going to be covering the prior to doc, prior to funding, updating needs list, appraisal, home inspection report, pest inspection, roof certification, and the estimated HUD-1 settlement statement. A lot of you real estate agents probably seen a lot of these reports, but again, it's still valuable for you to know what to look out for the loan part of it. You might know what the buyer might be concerned about, but I'm not sure you necessarily know what the lender looks out for, the red flags. Okay. So you should have a packet here, and I hope I have it in the same stack order as you do. But we're going to go over the actual conditional loan approval. If you guys can pull this one up, I'm pulling up on the screen. So on this conditional loan approval, this is actually an actual loan approval that was approved back in January 11, 2012. One of our lender over at TJ Financial just sent it over to us here. And I'm going to go over kind of the basic for you. Most of them look similar to this, and but if they don't, it's still essentially the same layout. You'll have the status, and there are 3 different statuses you should be aware of. One is being approved, one is being denied, and the third one is called suspended. And that suspended status means I need more, or the underwriter needs more information in order to determine whether it's approved or denied. So suspended is not a bad thing. It just means we need more information. This one is approved. Your loan number, whenever you're communicating with your lender, your account executive, the underwriter, the production manager, any of those people over on the lender, make sure you include the loan number in the email subject. It helps everybody on their end to help you faster. Okay? And I typically like to put the borrower's first and last name because internally our loan numbers are different than theirs, but we always, the processor, just like a real estate agent, they use property address. Loan officer, they use borrower's last name. So, and you might have a lot of Smith and all that, so you should put the first name with that too. On the borrower's name, you need to make sure it's spelled correctly, because if it's spelled incorrectly here, all of the loan documents drawn will be incorrect. So this needs to match your driver license. I keep saying this, but you guys, if it doesn't match your driver license, the notary public will not sign. Let them sign the documentation. So conflict, resolve it. Property address, same thing. It needs to match your property address on the appraisal, on the title report, on insurance, on most of the documentation. The loan amount here, it will affect your DTI, I'm sorry, your loan to value, your LTV, if the appraised value is wrong in their system. So if you're looking at this and the loan to value right here says 35.43 and you've got a 40%, one of these are off, the loan amount or the appraised value. So, and if your loan to value is not correct, your pricing, when you go to lock the rate, will not be correct. So make sure your loan to value is calculated correctly. Your interest rate here is not as important as the one that is on your rate lock sheet. The rate lock sheet is the binding documentation that will guarantee your clients that rate. Documentation, you're probably going to see full this probably the next year or two. Back then, they did have light documentation, stated income, verified asset, no income, no asset. They have all different type of documentation. But for the most part, you're going to see only full or light. This is the version of desktop underwriting that they use, the DU 8.3. You might have a different finding because you probably use a different version. So if you ever have conflicting decision, approve eligible is what you're looking for, and you get something like a refer ineligible, that basically means that, caution, underwriter, something doesn't seem to fit. You need to check what DU version they're using. And the underwriter is going to be your best friend. You need to make sure that you treat them with respect, even though you don't necessarily agree with them. That saying, you catch more flies with honey than, I forget, that saying where it's better for you to actually just be nice to them. Even if you disagree, I actually get a lot of the suspended actually to approval just by saying, okay, great, what do you suggest? Instead of going at, I see a lot of loan officers just kind of go at it and yell at them and say, you don't know what the F you're doing, and you check this. You're not going to win them over that way. You're going to probably have to restart the loan process with another underwriter or even a different lender. So be nice to this person. Your transaction coordinator, your loan processor, they can communicate with the underwriter, and I recommend that whenever there's a kind of iffy situation that needs a little bit more finessing, don't let your processor or your transaction coordinator do that job for you. You need to go back for yourself and actually explain to them the little missing information that's important to get the loan approved. Okay, so a lot of times you can't pass along, but you got to take the big task on with the underwriter yourself. And also, the underwriter has a gatekeeper. That person is the account manager, production manager, they call it all different type, but they're essentially the loan processor for the underwriter. Okay? So you'll want to kind of get, also befriend the production manager on that, or account manager. Your single family resident, this is a rate term, occupancy, and you want to check this stuff here because everything that is determined later is based on this information. And just make sure you double check this, okay? Now we're going to go down to the prior to doc, and I'm going to show you here, if you look at the condition that broken down to prior to docs, prior to funding, and then escrow closing condition. This escrow closing condition is prior to closing. Some people call it just escrow closing, but it's prior to closing. So we call it PTDs for prior to docs. So let me kind of scroll up here. So this is called PTDs, PTFs, and down here would be PTCs. We rarely deal with PTCs because most lenders will not allow PTCs. They just allow PTFs. And I'll kind of cover a situation where you will have a PTC. On this is your typical of what it looks like. It'll say appraisal desk review order after lock-in. Do you guys know what a desk review is? Anybody know what a desk review is? You want to explain to what a desk review might be?
You mean for the appraisal?
Yes.
Yeah, that's when they go have their in-house people look at the appraisal, make sure they agree with the value.
Perfect. So it is a in-house person reviewing, just as we review our client pay stub, bank statements, and we just want to make sure that it is sufficient. They have their in-house person, and it could. And today there will be an appraisal management company, or there will be inside the lender. They will review it, make sure that the appraiser abides to their overlays. not just necessarily the standard for the appraisal industry. It'll be for their company specifically. So, and if there is a desk review, it's not required for every single one. If there is, there usually is a fee, about $150 is the desk review fee. If you know that lender always required desk review, if you don't disclose it on your initial fee worksheet, which is generating your good faith estimate, you would have under-disclosed by $150. That's coming out of your pocket. Anything you under-disclose come out of the broker check. Okay, so make sure that if you suspect there's a desk review fee, you include that $150 in there, and put $200 if you're not sure about the fee. Appraisal report order, and if you look at this, it's a condition, but sometimes it's just a note. And this is where you don't copy and paste all of this and send it to your borrower. You just don't. It's internal for yourself. So on here, this is another one that said borrow to explain, right? And that means borrower. So borrower to explain each specific inquiry in the past 120 days and to verify any new open or pending account. This is a standard condition. Most underwriters will start with a standard set of condition, and then they just delete from it or add to it. And sometimes you'll see, they do make mistakes. There'll be some standard one in there. But this is why, if you remember back when we do about two, or even last one, we said in the letter of explanation, when we submit a file to processing, we always do the letter of explanation for the inquiries. We always do one for derogatory credit, and we do one for any large deposit, and the AKA. So we do those four up front because we know there is part of their standard or condition. So just address it. They're going to condition for it. If you have it in there, it will most likely be taken out. Okay. Then you have your mortgage broker fee agreement. That's MBFA. Signed by the borrower and broker. If broker fee changes, refer to the website. And this one is also a standard condition with no cash out. Reduce the loan amount and cash back. And do you guys know what the allowable amount is for a no cash out refi? You guys know what the percentage is? So if we did a rate term, meaning we reduced the interest rate or reduced the payment or reduced the term from a 30-year to 20-year, 15-year, we're not getting cash out. But there is an accidental amount that is allowed where you can get some cash out, but it's not considered cash out. So what that is if you look here, you can't get more than $2,000 basically, but it cannot exceed 2%. So if you have a loan amount of $50,000, 2% of that is $1,000. You cannot get more than $1,000. It's the lesser of $2,000 or 2% of it. And that is for your conventional loan. If you have like a jumbo loan, they'll actually increase it to $5,000 or 1%, the greater of the two. Okay, and the jumbo loan is anything above $417,000. That's why they reduce it to 1%. Okay, so the lesser of $5,000 and 2%. Make sure you do that whenever it is a rate term. And no principal reduction allowed on this one is, this happens a lot on FHA loans when you're doing a refinance. And right now FHA on like a 3.5% rate, they'll give you like 3 or 4 points. And we don't have that much closing costs. A lot of time we'll use that amount for those who don't do borrow pay and soak up all that YSP. They'll take whatever's left over and actually apply it towards the principal. The loan amount is still the same. They just apply it so the beginning balance is X amount lower, whatever's in excess of the YSP. So principal reduction happens a lot on FHA loans, okay, not necessarily on conventional. Need escrow instruction, preliminary title report, and 2010 completed 1040s with all schedule. And this is where we went over that exercise where if you look at the tax return, any number on the right hand side, you kind of scroll to the left and you see the attached Schedule C, attached Schedule D, whatever that is. They will say we need all schedule. So if you see that, you said I did submit a 1040 or the tax return, how come they're asking for it? Usually they're asking for the additional schedules. Insurance policy. This is to verify premium amount. If you have an old expired insurance policy, we usually just call the insurance agent ourselves and just ask the agent to send us the newest one. So just ask for the agent name and phone number, and you can get it for them. A lot of times they'll just ask, make sure that the premium is correct, and that is still valid. And a verbal VOE, verification of employment, is when they'll call, we'll call once, we'll complete our own form, and we'll make sure that they're currently employed, what their wage is, when their start date is, and the year to date. Then the lender will also do another final verbal verification of employment right before the loan funds. So usually about no more than 3 days before the loan funds. And you want to make sure they still have the job then. Okay. Initial good faith estimate, mortgage broker fee agreement, and servicing, SSPL. I'll get back to you on what that means there, but I'm pretty sure it's the servicing statement. And to be reviewed. And if you get all this stuff here, we can move it to funding. To docs. So getting docs out, you hear us, can we order docs, or is it in line for docs? What that means is we've cleared all the prior to doc condition. It is in line for the actual signing document to be sent to escrow. And then escrow will then need another about 24 hours to prepare their escrow documentation and send it and schedule a signing with the borrower. Now, this is the mistake that a lot of loan officers will make, is that they get past the prior to doc condition, they order docs, and they sit back and relax. That's not the right way to do it. You've got to make sure that this whole long list is what is required to close the loan. You still got to take care of it. So we instruct all the loan officers, take care of all conditions, whether it's prior to doc, prior to closing, or prior to funding. You got to take care of it in order for the loan to fund. There are exceptions when we do move stuff from prior to doc to prior to funding, usually with purchase. And because they have a close of escrow date that they need to meet, and the borrower's leaving tomorrow, they won't be back for a week, we need to meet this. We said, we know the borrower has this. Can you just move it prior to funding, get the docs out, let them sign on Friday, and they'll get it to us when they come back from vacation. So then the seller can sign their documentation too. So there are times we do make the exception and we say, hey, can we move to prior to funding? So on here, if you look at this, this condition is standard, corrected final type 1003 signed by the borrower and originator. That is your final. Remember how when we take the loan application, we're asking them a question and we're just kind of filling it out manually? That's fine. It can be whatever you write on there. But the final one needs to be accurate. And we need to make sure that the processor, and they will do this, they'll update it and they'll send it along with the document to sign to escrow. So this is a standard one. And borrow to sign date all tax return. If you have tax returns in there, grab the second page of your 1040 and it'll say sign here, or it'll say copy only. You have to grab that. Even if there's I guess a signature there, it's not original. So you still need to send it to escrow along with your type 1003 and then have them re-sign it with a wet signature. They want to see the wet signature. The redisclosure on these here, they're just stating that they can't fund until 3 days after they redisclose. Whenever you guys need to redisclose the truth in lending, all the email, they click on that, it will expedite that 3-day waiting period because they acknowledge that. Most recent pay stub along with most recent bank statement. This is why we instruct the borrower at the beginning of the transaction is that it's your responsibility, Mr. Borrower, to send me the most recent bank statement, the most recent pay stub. I won't remind you every time, but it's your responsibility. Just send it. As soon as you get it, send it in. And you just set it up right there up front so they don't ask you why do you keep asking for that. And here's the satisfactory verbal VOE. Quality control, the 4506T. Some lender, for example, I believe GMAC, which is now Green Tree, along with CMG, a few other lenders will require you to actually order the 4506T, which is the tax transcript of your tax return. They verify directly with the IRS, not just a piece of paper that the borrower will submit. They verify with the IRS all the numbers that are filed on the tax return. Some lenders will require you to do that before or at the time of loan submission. So you got to find out that, and if you didn't anticipate that, it will actually delay your submission by 3 days because that's usually how long it takes for the IRS to get back to you. But we do have service providers that do it in 24 hours or less. And for those that don't know, is what the quality assurance, Fannie Mae came out with this about a couple years ago. Right before they fund the loan, it is required for them to pull a current copy of the credit report. So people might want to go out and buy something and think, oh, I signed the loan document, I'm in the clear. No, you actually wait till it records. Even after it funds, the lender sends the money to escrow, hasn't recorded yet, they can actually rescind that wire, and then they can kill the deal too. Because they might have pulled that credit report 3 days before, it's on a Friday, and then it is signed, and it didn't record till Monday. Now, what they pulled on Wednesday is more than 3 days old. It doesn't kind of fit the Fannie Mae. They got to pull it again to come that Monday. So anything can happen. Make sure that you tell them if the credit report will be pulled one more time. HUD 1, if you ever deal with any bank-owned property, it actually goes through management to get the HUD approved. And that takes usually about a day to 3 days to go through that process. Make sure you send the HUD 1 at least 3 days before the scheduled close of escrow date to the asset manager on bank-owned property, short sales and stuff like that. So make sure you do send that, and they do need about 3 days. So if you think somebody could sign today and fund tomorrow, and you just drew docs to say that it won't happen on a short sale or for bank-owned property. And prior to closing is after they fund the loan, there are still things that needs to be done on escrow. And I'll tell you an example when it would fall on us. But all these usually are on the escrow. They'll need to finalize their escrow instruction. They'll do amendment for these here. And they make sure that if there's any things to be paid off, usually on the refinance, it's always at least a mortgage that we're refinancing. Any credit card that they decide to consolidate, any student loan they want to pay off, any debt that they want to pay off, or even tax liens or judgment that are required to be paid off. Hazard insurance, it just needs to be paid. They'll take care of that. And pay off demand for the subject property along with the closing protection letter. Now, the one time that will fall upon us to get this would be if we ask the lender to fund a loan on a property that is scheduled to close, or the seller's going to basically cancel the purchase transaction. And there is, let's say, a missing AC unit, but we need an AC unit for the loan. There is what is, they call it repair escrow holdback, all these type of different terms. But what it does is you put 150% of the repair cost, which is bid by general contractor. So let's just say that the AC unit is $2,000. And we would put $3,000 to escrow. Then we would have it repaired, and an inspector or the appraisal will come out and they'll take a picture of it. There are times when they will allow that to happen after they send out the money, but before we actually close out the file. They'll record and everything, and it's done. But we have usually a week to provide that updated photo. It's a completion report. Okay, so there are times when you will see like an updated 442, which is the form number of the inspection, for the completion of the repair. So there are times when you will do that, and typically with the escrow holdback or repair escrow, you see those. So this is your typical conditional loan approval that you'll see. This one is actually kind of skinny, and you will see if you submit the file hastily and you just kind of put it together, and your condition list can be 30, 40 condition. I mean, just from the borrower. You don't want to do that. You do that, they see your file, they're going to put it on the bottom of the stack the next time you submit. So make sure you do a clean job, and our processor will tell you what is missing. And in your submission checklist, you'll see that items too that you're missing. So although it's going to be like a learning experience for both you and the processor to get to know each other, how you guys do business, they're doing it for your sake. They're kind of preventing you from submitting sloppily, which will put the whole company at the bottom of the stack to the underwriter. Okay, so at the same time, there might be a call where you say, I don't agree with you holding my file back. I need to submit it today. That's fine. Just come to me, and then I'll make sure that we make the right arrangement, and we make sure that it's stacked properly. If you guys have any question on this conditional loan approval, we're kind of keeping it simple. You're going to get some really weird condition, but this one will get you an idea of what our standard condition, where the underwriter would just leave it there, and then what they manually put in. Okay.
have a basic question.
Can you speak up so they can hear too?
So the prior doc conditions, does it mean that we have to satisfy all these things and then they can send the loan doc to escrow?
Yes,
so the question, satisfy all that?
So the question is that all the conditions underneath the prior to doc condition section, is it required to clear all this in order to get the loan docs out? Yes. And that's where, let's say that you got all of this except for one. Then we would talk to the underwriter and ask them to move it prior to funding, just to clear everything out of the prior to docs to get the loan docs out. So there are times when we can move it prior to funding. It's just got to make sense and be realistic if that's going to happen or not. Because just think about it this way: if we get loan docs out, we get the borrower's hope up, we get the seller to sign, we get escrow to do all this stuff, and there's a condition that's never going to be met. We just wasted everybody's time. Guess who they're going to be mad at? It's usually the lender and the loan officer. So they want to prevent situations like that. As long as it's reasonable expectation that is going to happen, usually a signature on the documentation to move it prior to funding, because the borrower's going to sign all the loan docs anyways. So prior to, just in your mind, anything on this list, take care of it. Don't wait for the prior to funding or prior to closing stage. Okay, so I wanted to go to this one here. Is you'll see, which is a needs list. We use this called, it's a needs list, and I'll pull on the screen for those there. You guys can type it in the email. We just have a template and a system that we use, and I'm going to introduce to you guys next week. It's called Mortgage Planner CRM, MPC for short. And CRM stands for Client Relationship Management. So we put all the condition into the system, and I'm going to just show you briefly what it looks like. Everything is automated, so every step of the way that we actually update the system, it will send out any outstanding condition to them. And you know what? For this one, I'll save for next week for you guys. But this is what it sends out automatically on behalf. This is not required for you guys to sign up for this, because you got to remember, you're paying $200 a year for Calyx Point, you're paying $59 or $69 for loan shifter. This one costs roughly about $100 a month, and then we got other stuff that we use that will build up. You don't necessarily need everything out the gate, just kind of work with what you guys have. But this one will actually retain a lot of client for you, or actually convert a lot of prospect for you because of the email drip campaign system. This one in particular is when we hit a button, it'll send out whatever we put in that box is still missing. And it's in a format, they know how to read it. So if you look at this, outstanding condition, this is all the initial stuff that we ask up front, the CIA that we talked about. This particular borrower is a VA, a veteran, and they're doing a VA loan. And we don't ever delete anything, just like the underwriter will not delete these conditions. You'll see with most of the lender on these conditions, I'll put on the screen for those at home. For the condition, you'll see that what they'll do is they'll put sign off. They'll put the date here with the underwriter initial, and they'll sign it off. So the condition always remain there for people to see what it is, and they don't necessarily delete it. We do the same thing with the needs list, and you guys should have a template within your email that you guys use. And let's see here. And if you want to copy, it's fine. Keep it simple. Hey, hey, Mr. Borrower, and we always put this property address up here. Whenever you deal with multiple property, they're all refinancing 3-5 property at once, they will say, which property is this for? And just solve that problem. So make sure you put the property of the subject property for that loan there. And then here, we use the cross out. And in Outlook, you guys ever use it, or even if you use one of those web-based email, they usually have a strike-through feature. Use that. Okay, so it never, this is the reason why we use the strike-through, is we'll ask for a 2-month bank statement, and then maybe a month went by, and they said, I gave you a bank statement. They said, yes, we initially asked for it. It's still up there, so they can see that it's a totally different condition. Okay. So on here, if you notice that whenever we talk about bank statement, we always put the name of the bank and account ending in. Get in that habit, because they have multiple account, and they don't know which one you're talking about. If you're asking for anything in particular, here's page this, and then from 8/6. You want to put the date in as much detail, and it is very helpful with bank statement. You're going to run into this a lot. There's going to be a lot of back and forth, which one you're talking about, what date, what statement. So make sure with the bank statement you do that, okay? And the needs list is just, hey, I need this. And if you guys ever have your own, and I'm not sure how many of you guys can, but you guys have groups in your email. I know Gmail has that function. A lot of people use Gmail. You can actually do a group where it's like an email distribution. If they send it to that email, for example, if people send it to Green Team at My Equity Zone, it'll go to not only me, but also my process, my transaction coordinator, everybody in my team. So you can build that team if you have an assistant or anything like that, because sometimes you're with the client for 2 hours and there's something time sensitive and they're sending it to you. So you kind of train them to, don't send it directly to me, send it to my team. And when you guys are working with a transaction coordinator, we will create one for you too if you want to upon the request. Okay? So just make a template. My point to you with the needs letter is you're always going to be needing additional documentation. And learn how to use those formatting. We bold certain things, we underline certain things, we highlight certain things, and just get used to it, because you got to think of it from the borrower's end. They don't work with these type of documents every day. They have no idea what you're talking about. Some people don't even know a tax return is 1040. Okay, so you don't use any abbreviation, any acronyms. Don't use those. Spell it out. And also, if you do want to, if you're going to use it multiple time, then you abbreviate it after the first instance, and then you can use the acronym. And really, guys, try to avoid the pronouns he, she, we, us, those things, because people always ask, what do you mean by we? Who's we? Who's they? Who's she? So try to use their name. And this is just based on my experience. People are always confused. And if you have this long conversation, they keep saying she. There's 3 people involved. I mean, you don't know which one you're talking about. So try to avoid pronouns. Question on creating a template, you guys have that, you can just type it up. Very simple, just keep it simple. Now, I wanted to go over the appraisal report, because every file will have the appraisal report, but not every file will have the other 3 type of report. So the first page, and this appraisal report is dated back in 2009. Not much have changed, even stuff that are 2005. They're all about the same thing. They just added a few more sections section here and there. So if we take a look at this, the way this works is whatever address here carries out throughout the file. So I always check this. If it's misspelled here, it's going to probably be misspelled everywhere else. You guys have that in front of you guys? It's the one that's an appraisal. I know there's a lot of reports in here. There's the one for the appraisal. Okay. So we'll pull up here. You want to make sure that it is, and by the time, because now at the introduction to the appraisal management company, we call it AMC, Appraisal Management Company, they communicate directly with the borrower and also the appraiser. We, as in the real estate agent, broker, the lender, can no longer communicate directly with the appraiser. So we communicate through this company. If any correction is needed, you actually got to call the appraisal management company. Do not call the appraiser listed on here. If you do that, you will jeopardize the loan. You jeopardize your client, timeliness on closing. If you do that, you just violated the HVCC, the Home Valuation Code of Conduct, okay, introduced in 2009. You cannot contact them at all. Now, there's a situation when you're buddied with this appraiser, right? And you're having coffee, you're talking, just don't talk about the transaction at all. You just can't. If it's documented anywhere that you did, there might be undue influence on the valuation or the valuation of the property. That's what they're trying to prevent. Because I remember back in 2005, I called my appraiser and said, hey, how much do you think this value of this house is? I said, do you think you can bump it up a little bit? I think I can. It's that kind of conversation that actually happened. So they try to prevent that. So on here, if you take a look at that address, make sure that is correct. The lender should be correct. This is what you're looking out for on the appraisal, and this is to save yourself from actually delaying the file. It won't kill the deal. But you need to make sure that the spelling is correct on the property address. The borrower name is correct. Sometimes If you put it in your system as their first name last and last name first, it will show up that way, and that's a minor error, but it delays. Every time you submit a request to the AMC, it goes to the appraiser, it goes to AMC review, and then it goes to the lender. So you're talking about maybe 1 to 3 day delay for something simple. Okay? Make sure you do check the APN number here, the assessed parcel number, which will be shown on your preliminary title report. Match it up with those two. And also, if you can't find it, look on the property tax bill. The other thing you want to look at is, you see this real estate tax? This needs to be within the vicinity of the preliminary title report. Make sure it's somewhat close. And if it's not, they need to correct it, or usually they would need to correct it. The census tract, it will be shown on the prelim, but I just tell you, look at the real estate property tax, look at the appraiser, the APN number, the property address, and the borrower's name. Those are the important things. This is a dead giveaway if you guys are trying to sell a non-owner occupied as an owner occupied property, because the appraiser will mark whether it's the owner occupying it, the tenant, or it's vacant. Okay? So there are times when maybe the homeowner is going to remodel, and they took everything out, fumigated or something, and looked vacant. As long as you tell the appraiser, hey, they live there, but it's just being fumigated, they'll note it up on there. But who would appraise it while during that stage anyways, right? So make sure you pay attention to this, and if there are any discrepancy, you want to ask your borrower that. Hey, what's the real deal? Do make sure that if there is an HOA, homeowner association due, you do include in your debt to income ratio under the housing expense, because there are times when it wasn't disclosed that there was a $500 HOA for that unit, or that project. Okay? Make sure you do check that. And the name of the neighborhood right here, if you see a name of a neighborhood, they're usually in a planned unit development. Not always, but they usually are. So make sure that's another telltale sign that there might be HOA included. For this, it just tells you if it's going to be a purchase or refinance. Anything that is written and not just a checkbox, please do read it. What I mean by that is this: is a subject is listed for sale as 874,500. This is the MLS number. It was on the market for 122 days, and it's currently under contract for 869. Okay, so this is a purchase transaction, and we want to see if this was a refi and it comments something like that, then we've got to find out why is it listed for sale if we're refinancing this. So on here, they didn't look at the, or actually they did look at the purchase agreement. Contracted price for here, and we're going to go down a little bit. This here is fairly simple. If you look at this neighborhood characteristic, anything in the middle and the left is good. Anything on the right, you need to figure out what's wrong with it. Okay? Same thing with this one unit housing trend. Anything in the middle and the left is good. Anything over here is a potential red flag. So I'm just teaching you guys the red flag. I'm not teaching you guys how to really read the whole appraisal, what you look out for. So under here, marketing time is taking more than 6 months to sell this house. The normal housing industry is 3 to 6 months to sell a house or the inventory, right? And in here is the property value is declining. You don't want to buy in a house or secure, a prop or lend on a property that's declining. So you want to make sure if it's here, it doesn't mean that the loan is not lendable. It just means that we need to address the concerns. On here, what you're looking for on here is that what is the low price in that neighborhood, what's the high? And what is the average? Kind of predominant, not average, just predominantly, even though there's home for 600 at 1.1 million, predominantly a majority of the home in that area is 869 bucks, all right, 869,000. So you're looking at that, and if they're selling for 874,500 and it's 869, you're looking at this, that's kind of where the market is. And on here is the age of the property, and they're saying the neighborhood is predominantly about 35 years old. This is another one people overlook, is that if you're financing a one unit and most of it is 80%, that's good, because it's a residential neighborhood. But if you're buying a residential neighborhood and there's only maybe 5%, then they're buying in the commercial area, and it might not be as appealing to a new buyer should the bank have to foreclose on this property and sell it to get their money back. So their concern is that what is the percentage land use for that area. And on this neighborhood description, read it, because sometimes they have some funny, weird things on there. You know, they'll note maybe like a haunted mansion down the road, or some murder happened. Something that doesn't quite fit, and they might need a little bit more documentation. The lender will say, hey, tell me more about this murder that happened down the street, or certain things like that. Okay? So read this here, and the rule. I'm sorry?
So if that's the case, then what do you do? You have to call appraisal people, or what do you do?
No, I know the real estate law, if anybody died in a certain home or something, you got to disclose it, make sure that the certain real estate disclosure is...
Okay, but if they wrote it down, there's nothing much you can do about it.
No, if he wrote it, he commented, we just need to support it. So,
Okay.
and remember that the lender sells these loans to Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, so they're going to get audited the same way. So they're thinking of, if I get audited, what would they ask for? So they ask you to supply those documentation. So the question was that, if the appraiser noted it, what can we do about it? The only thing we can do is just make sure that every blank is filled, meaning that you answer all the question uncertainties for the underwriter. And the underwriter is just really trying to protect himself from an audit from Fannie Mae or whoever they're selling it to. On here, if you look at the zoning, a lot of time the zoning is usually 1, 3, 5. Every city and county has different zoning. What you're really looking for is it legal? Does it conform to building codes? Was that actually inspected by the city, and does it pass all the ordinances? Whenever it's legal non-conforming, it just means that it doesn't meet the current building code, but it was grandfathered in before that code was actually passed. So it's okay as long as it's legal or legal non-conforming. But whenever it's legal non-conforming, we want to find out why. And if it has anything to do with safety or hazard, we've got to address it. Okay, so let's say the wiring were done back in the 1800s, and it was a historical landmark or certain things like that. And the lender said, no, we're afraid of fire. It is a safety or hazardous condition. So they might say, we won't lend on it unless you fix it. Okay. And you do want it to be the highest and best use for the subject property. What that means is that there are single-family resident with in-laws units, so they have suites in the back, and it will be defined as a single-family resident with an in-law suite. But if you have a 2-unit, and your 2-unit is fully bath, there's a kitchen, there's a bath, everything like that, and an appraiser actually appraised as a single-family resident with an in-law unit, but on property, on the county record says it's 2-unit, that's not the highest and best use, okay? This is a little difficult for some people when you run into, especially rural property. They'll have 3 units, they knock one out, never change the record of the county, and it still shows 3 units. Well, one, they got to go to the county and fix it and make sure that this is. And if you see a no, there are lenders that will allow appraiser that is not the highest and best use. Okay, so it's just comparing. You're not comparing apples to apples at that point. That's what it really says. Are you really comparing two like similar properties? If there are any type of non-public sewage, a lot of homes have septic tanks out in the I guess rural area, is fine. They just need to make sure that it passed the septic tank inspection. If there are any wells, some people don't have public waterways, they just have a well, which is fine too. Whenever there's anything that's other, you need to get the right certification to make sure that the water is drinkable, the sewage is usable, certain things like that. So you make sure that if there's anything other, address that concern. And also under the site section, and you'll see that on the left side there's a section here. On the site section, you want to make sure that it's not in a flood zone. If it is, you have to get flood insurance. Okay? So make sure when you shop for homeowner insurance, also get the flood insurance. And on the bottom, let me make sure we got those. Okay. On the improvement side, you're looking at, this is where you can figure out if it's attached or detached. So detached just mean they don't share any common walls. When I say they, meaning the adjoining or the property next door. So in San Francisco, even though it looks like the houses are right next to each other, they're really not sharing adjoining wall. They have separate walls. They're real close to each other. Like townhouses, they do use adjoining wall, or condos, they have adjoining walls. And the pricing changed when that happened. Effective age, if you notice here, this appraisal was in 2009. So if you did 2009, the home is about 45 years old. But it said the effective age is 35. All that means is how old does the house look like? What does it look like? It looks like it's 35 years old, not necessarily the 45 years. I do wanted to, if you have any full basement or partial basement under foundation, if the appraiser is going to give you any value for the basement, it needs to be fully finished, not half finished. And finished just means that it's a livable space. There's drywall, and the ceiling's covered up. There's no exposed joists and studs and stuff like that. And let's see here. There should always be a heating component, but you don't necessarily need an AC unless an AC was there before. Okay, let me repeat that to you guys. They don't want you to freeze to death, but you can sweat and jump in a pool. Okay, so you just make sure there's a heater. Make sure that there's a way for them to keep warm during those cold winter nights. But on a summer, they don't care. Again, the key to the AC is that there was no evidence that an AC unit used to exist on that property. Then you don't need an AC unit. But if there was evidence that there was one, you will need one installed. Okay. On this here, if you look at anything that said wood, be careful. And if there's wood and it says anything but average, and on here, you do want to see everything average or good. Anything that said poor, it needs to be fixed. Okay? And especially when it's poor and it's with wood, then you need a pest inspection to make sure there's no termite. Go ahead.
Pest inspection can be ordered after appraisal?
Yes, but it's usually recommended the other way around. You should probably order the pest inspection before you send the appraiser out. Because the thing is, and the question was, with pest inspection, can you order it, or should you order after the appraisal, or can you? You can order any time, but you just need to be careful, because whatever is on the appraisal usually is transferable from one lender to the next, whereas a pest inspection, very easy to make that go away. What I mean by that is that if you have a purchase agreement, and usually pest inspection is only ordered on purchase, not necessarily ordered on a refi, unless there was a hint of some type of infestation. So on the purchase agreement on page 2, on the section 4, or I forget what subsection, but on the middle of the page 2 on the purchase agreement, there's a checkbox. It'll say who pays for the pest inspection. As long as that's not checked, we're not going to ask for it. So even if that was checked, and the seller and the buyer writes an addendum saying we waive the pest inspection, most lender will allow you to not get the pest inspection. But some will say on the original one, it showed it, I need to see it. Okay, and that's when you switch lender if you can't provide it. Okay. And that's the good thing with us guys, is that as broker, if it doesn't work with one lender, we can easily submit it to another one, keep it open, see if this one can do it. Once they can do it, we can cancel with the other lender. All right, but that kind of leads me into what is called pull-through rate. And the lender monitors us with a pull-through rate of at least 80% or higher is to get preferred pricing. Now, preferred pricing usually beat the competition by 0.25% or more. In order to maintain that in a quarter, we need to usually fund between 3 and 6 loans with that particular lender. And whatever we lock or submit, and they have 2 different pull-through ratio, whatever you lock, you want 80% or higher. So if you lock somebody, price got better, you cancel with them, you go somewhere else, you can only do that on two files out of 10. As far as submission, and they want a submission ratio of usually about 50% or higher. So if you submit it but you don't lock it, that's fine. They never made any commitment with any of their investors, so that's okay. But the lock one, if you lock the rate, make sure you close it. It's going to affect everybody, okay, in the company on that preferred pricing. And then what you're looking on here is, if you look at additional feature, this is where the value, you would start seeing what kind of homeowner they are. The improvement they've done is chain link fence, porch, patio slab, ceiling fans in kitchen and bedroom, wood floor and entry, remodeled kitchen, 1 fireplace located in living room. The subject has a room addition with a legal permit, and they give the permit number. If it's not permitted addition, there are 2 ways that lenders will do it. One, it will require you to get a permit. That's the conventional way. The other way is that they just don't give any value for that addition. Okay, so they actually deduct it from any comparable sale that does have an addition. So there's 2 ways you can approach it. And this here, where it said the condition of the property, you need to see a lot of time they will say, there's some mold in the kitchen and bathroom. There are infestation in the garage. You need to note that. If you do see that, address it. And make sure, and my rule of thumb is, you see anything that they typed in and it's not a default field, read it. You should read it. They wrote it in there for a reason. Okay. All right. Any question on this one? This is your main page. This is the one that has the most information. This is where you're going to all look at. Okay, and then we're going to kind of go. The other ones are pretty easy. If you look at the comparable sales, this is what they're saying is that we have a property. We have a property located about less than a mile away, and the comp is usually within a mile or less. Typically, you want 1 in your neighborhood, and then at least 2 outside your neighborhood. Because when you're looking to buy a property, you don't just look at one neighborhood. Sometimes you do, but you look at competing neighborhood. So on here, it's about 0.91, 0.62. You're looking at the distance at least a mile or less. You want to make sure that it actually sold. And the way you find out is they'll either have an MLS number, a doc number, something where it would tell you that it's sold. Okay. And on here, if we look at this, let me make sure. Okay. So on here, it did sell, and it was conventional or what type of financing here, and they have MLS numbers. Usually, lenders will not take the MLS because that's still a listing. They want to see a doc number, which is recorded with the county, DOC. You'll see a DOC number that would validate that it did sell. And this one, it shows MLS, but I think, and I was just comparing, this one they just did it funky. They usually have a doc number, but I looked at the other comparables, and that comparable did say this one was a pending sale and active listing, and that they didn't have any MLS number. So you do want to look for doc number, okay? But this one, in this particular case, they used MLS number, which is fine. It's still sold. This is the type of financing in the area and how long it's been on the market. And just so you guys know, what we're looking at is the base. It's sold for $890, $865, and $835. And you're looking for similarity in bedrooms and bath. So we got 4, 2.5, 3, 2, 3, 2. And sometimes there aren't, people love their home that they don't sell it, that particular home. So you want to make sure that it's within one bathroom more or 1 bathroom less, 1 bedroom more, one bedroom less. Sometimes they don't have that option. And what you do, the way appraisal work is, if that property that you're comparing it with is superior, better condition than your work subject property, you're going to deduct. You're going to take away from your value or that sales price value. Okay, so in this example, if you look at it sold for $890, because it's in superior condition than our subject, we're going to minus $20,000 from that $890, meaning that to compare it, now the value will be $870 instead of $890, just because it's inferior in condition or superior in condition. Okay. okay? And then in here, because this is smaller than our lot size, our subject property, we're gonna give value to make up for that smaller lot for the comparable. So everything is, you take away or you add to that project, that subject property to get that value. The key is, you do not want to exceed a certain a net amount. So you see this net adjustment and gross adjustment. So the net and gross, the rule of thumb is that you don't want the net to be more than, let me just think about it before I answer here. So the net shouldn't be more than 5% and the gross shouldn't be more than 10%. If it's more outside of those two numbers, it's not like two similar property. It's not comparable, so to speak, okay? So you want to make sure that the net adjustment, because back in the old days you had adjustment 25%, because they try to make it fit. They try to bring the value up for those property. So pay attention to those adjustments and find out, and they have wording on how they came up with these numbers, okay? Any question on these adjustables? All right, and one other thing is the APN actually carries through over here too. You do want to make sure that it matches your preliminary title report. On here, you do want to see this. You see where it says date of prior sales. If anything's sold on our subject property, especially on a refinance, if it's sold within the last 12 months, they want to make sure we get a full chain of title history on that property. Okay, so make sure that if it's sold, they got an explanation there, and read this here. And then if we take a look at this here, it will tell you how they adjust it. Is $2 per square foot per lot, $500 for physical age, $40 per living area, and $5,000 per bedroom and bath. And they put equal weight is placed on each comparable. So they do give you a little bit of, oh man, it's got 10 minutes left. So so read those there. There are a sales comparison approach. That's the most likely way that you can do. There's another way where it's the cost approach. The cost approach is what did it cost to rebuild that home. With today's current labor costs, along with material costs, they come over $869. This one is important here on the reconciliation part. You want to make sure that it's sold as is, or the appraisal is made as is. If it's subject to completion, you'll need to get what is called Form 442. It's a completion report, certification of completion. If there is any subject to following repairs, they need to repair those first. And repairs are different than the plan. On this here is, if you see the subject to completion of plan, that's usually for new construction. If you see it subject to the following repair, is usually a repair escrow or escrow OBAC that we got to do. And this one is if there's if they were not able to climb up into the attic and they suspect that there's infestation or something like that, they'll say subject to inspection of the attic. And this value here is the final appraised value. And the appraisal in today's market is, or lending environment, is only good for 3 months. And then after that, you got to get a recertification. It used to be good for up to a year, but now it's only 3 months. On this income, if you guys just take a look at this when you guys have a chance, the cost approach, it'll tell you how they came up with the cost to rebuild it here. And we really don't necessarily pay attention to that. Income approach is for like rental property. And this is HOA information. Whenever you have a condo or planned unit development, which is like a neighborhood that has common areas, swimming pool, basketball court, clubhouse, you'll have that there. On this is their standard. So when you guys get to this part here, you can skip it. It'll just say the same thing. But I always recommend you reading it at least once to understand what it's saying. Because if you're sitting in front of your client, you want to be able to answer the question. And then the other, right here is, you want to make sure that the appraiser is licensed. And this used to be important, but now the appraisal management company takes care of all this information here. And they'll have additional comparables down here. Usually whenever they have more than 3, it's because the comparables aren't so great. They're not that great, and they're doing more. But not necessarily because as the market change, you typically want to see 3 sold and either pending or listing. And that's what we have here. And the supplemental addendum is one that you do want to read, because this is not your standard disclosure. When you read this here, it will tell you specific information about this property. And read it, because this is where a lot of the condition will come from. You're probably going to wonder, why did they ask? How did you even see this? It's all in here. So you'll pay attention to this addendum and make sure that you do read it, and so you can anticipate the condition that the underwriter is going to ask for. Sometimes you'll see that they couldn't access a certain part of the house because maybe they didn't have the key. Well, then you can anticipate there's going to be a reinspection report, and they're going to have to pay for that. This is the market condition addendum, which is the 1004D. So if you look at the bottom of every form, they'll have the form number, 1004MC right here, the market condition. And that's going to be required for every report. Again, just take a look at this and take a look at the middle. Anything from the middle and left is good. Anything on the right, you got to pay attention to. Okay. And read those words there. And this is the supplemental addendum. Continue reading those things. They do have right here. Whoops. Okay. So I don't know if they're going to get disconnected here. But for that appraisal, let me just kind of continue with this here. I know we've got 10 minutes here. You guys flip to this diagram page where it says building sketch. Or actually, I'm sorry, right before the building sketch, there's a comments on sales comparison. This is where all the adjustments are made, and it'll tell you how to read that. So this building sketch, what you're looking for on the building sketch is that I've really never had a problem with this, but if you see that there was a roof that wasn't accounted for just because of the layout thing, they will actually condition for it. And so look for the layout of the property. There's usually never hidden rooms or anything like that, but if you do, they might ask for it. Is this okay? All right. So the last part that you want to go over, well, not the last. Let me show you this here. On your section 1000, that is your reserve. How many months reserve? If they have an impound account, it will be filled out. If they don't have an impound account, it won't be filled out. Okay. And also, this is where it always mess up. If you look at line 901, depending on the day that they close, you need to adjust that accordingly. Okay. So if we're on the 29th, or today is the 17th, guys, is that correct? 17th, and September has 30 days. That means they're going to collect interest. If we fund it today, they would collect today's date. So you just take 30 minus 17 and add 1. So we got 13 plus 1. We're going to collect 14 days of interest. And you would know when it's going to fund based upon the relationship and turn time that you have with the lender. Make sure that is correct. And if it's not, you need to have escrow corrected. Escrow will correct this for you. Escrow follows instruction, meaning your instruction too, not just the lender. It will follow an instruction, whatever they're told they will do. So sometimes it's wrong. A lot of this is wrong and you're off by several $100, and the lender will get pissed. As long as you know how to read it and make sure that it matches, then you should be okay. So the last thing I want to show you guys here is on this section here, it will show what your good faith estimate says, what you initially disclosed, and what the final one is. The variance, the maximum tolerance is 10%. So you can't vary more than 10%. If you under-disclose, and not everything can be varied by 10%. Okay, so if it's higher for whatever reason, you need to actually reduce your commission. Okay, so you got to reduce your own commission on those. And then here it will show you all the monthly payment, and then people will know the principal, interest, and mortgage. I get this question a lot. Why does it show my total monthly amount, principal, interest, mortgage, insurance? Why is it showing all this stuff? And you just got to explain to them that is impounding. Okay, and then if they don't show that, it's just principal and interest. You tell them your impound account is on the bottom. They'll tell you need to pay this on your own. All right. You guys have any question regarding this settlement statement? This is a. If you set it up right, you won't have any issue. But I suspect the first file that you do this, practice on someone before you practice on your client, and make sure that you know everything on this. This is your somebody looking at the receipt and they say you overcharged me, but really you charged it and you took it off. You got to know the mathematics of this and how it adds up. They will question you, and sometimes I can't figure it out if I didn't have that 15 minutes before I talk to the client. And we're scratching our head. So do this before you meet with your client, because especially with refinance, you can cancel the deal. They say it doesn't make sense. I'm not going to sign it. Purchase, not so much. You just kind of do what it is. Okay? All right. You guys have any other questions? Okay. Well, thank you for coming, guys.